So today what we're going to do is we're going to work with the disjointed rollovers. And a disjointed rollover will allow you to, this is what we're going to do. We're going to create a large image, and then we're going to create smaller images. There's two approaches to this. We're going to do the slightly simpler one because we want all of these large size images to load right away. We're not going to create separate thumbnails. If you had more than 4 or 5 images, I would recommend creating separate thumbnails. But here we're just going to resize them because we need the full-size ones loaded so we don't have to load 2 images. Can you guys understand why I'm taking that approach? It's a little bit easier. If you had hundreds of thumbnails, I would not do that because you wouldn't assume that they'd click on all of 100 thumbnails. And you can batch process making thumbnails in Photoshop. The video for that's like 2 weeks back. It's that batch processing where you can turn a whole folder full of images into thumbnails at one time. So if you want to do that many, do it that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to set this up. Now this does not match any of the templates that you've used in Dreamweaver. So that would be my container. And inside my container, I'm going to have a div here, and I'm going to have a div here. And they're both going to float to the left of the container, and I'm going to put on this image will be called main image, no spaces. And so that's its ID. Because the ID will allow us to put specific CSS characteristics on it. You guys remember that. And this is typically how I will plan a simple program, is I will sort of sketch it out. So that's going to be the ID of main image, and I'm going to, on the outside of this for main image, I'm going to set the padding to 25. You can do the padding or the margin for this one. And this width will be 650, 660, because my images are going to be set to 600 wide, and I want enough room. And then my thumbnails are going to be 150 wide, but we're going to set this div, because there will be a div here, which will be ID equals thumb, and its width will be 200. So we've got about 860 here. We're leaving more room than we need. So the container, and I want padding here and padding here. So if my container is the standard 960, and I set this width up to 200 with padding of 25, and we may adjust these, but this is where we're going to start. That will allow me, this is just sort of my plan. So we need 3 div tags, each with an ID. We need an image here with an ID. And it's not a bad idea to give each of these images an ID, but it's not required. We're going to set the width only for mine because my images are of a different height, but they're all the same width. So I'm going to set the width on this. And this may not exactly match yours depending on the maximum image width, because I'm just loading the large size images, and then I'm going to rescale them all to 150 for the width. And I'm going to let the height just be whatever it scales to. I'm going to set my background to black. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set it up so that if you mouse over one of these, this image will change. You guys with me on that? And this is really easy. We're going to create JavaScript, but we're not going to code it. And what we're going to do is we're going to use in the tools, I'd like to pull this down. It's not letting me connect. In the tools, we have behaviors, and that's what we're going to use, where we can add a behavior, and it's going to be a swap image. So go ahead and open up, create. If you have not created it, create a new folder, which will be 9. In the folder, put a new file, name it index, and make sure that you have images in there. I'm going to grab them out from my 142 class. I've got ones I've got already set up there. So mine will be in a folder called large. Your path might be slightly different. So I'm starting, and I'm keeping this simple, and here I have 4 images. So I'm going to open up the index file, and we're going to start working on this together. We're going to work in design view, and we're going to use the CSS properties to start working on this. Call this document Disjointed Rollovers. And that just means that we're going to do a mouse over, but it's not going to be under the image that we're mousing over. So I've got an index page titled Disjointed Rollovers, and I have brought images into the folder that it's in. Step 1, we're going to make sure that our CSS windows are open. This is our CSS styles currently. There are none. I don't want you to use the page properties. We're going to start by adding our divs and then setting the properties. So we're going to go to Insert up at the top, Layout Object, Div Tag. Insert, Layout Object, Div Tag. And when I select that, we're going to put it in the Add Insertation Point. It doesn't need a class here. It does need an ID. You can either call this main content or container, but this is going to be the outsidemost div tag. And then you're going to hit OK. And let's start adding styles as soon as everybody has that ID. Once you have that set up, now we're going to start adding CSS. So make sure that you've selected your CSS styles right here. We don't currently have any. And so I'm going to pull this out to make it a little bit easier to see. You can add a new CSS rule with the plus sign right here. And we're going to do it on an ID of container. And we're going to hit OK. And that should bring up this window right here. And this is the easiest way to really do custom layout if you don't want to get into using the templates. And we're doing it for this assignment. You're going to find that the labs lead into the projects because I anticipate that you're not going to use necessarily a standard layout. So I want to show you how to do a custom one, which in some ways is easier. So everybody should have the ID container window up where we can set changes to it. Is everybody with me? Anybody need help getting here? All right. We're going to start by making some basic changes that I do on all of them. For the font family, I want you to pick a sans serif. You can pick any one that you want. Just make sure it's a sans serif. My font size is going to be 1.3 M, and my font weight is going to be white. Not super important because we're going to have hardly any text on this particular page. But I do want to set the background of my site to black, which is very common for a photography site. Now this is actually on the container. I'm actually going to switch and put that on the body. It doesn't matter if it's here or this one can be transparent. The body I'll show through. Now for my box, this is where we're going to set up and make it center. So I'm going to put padding, same for all. No, I don't want that. I want the margin. I want a top margin, unchecked, same for all. Top margin, I'm going to set to 5. bottom margin I'm going to set to 5, and then right and left I'm going to set to auto. I'm going to set the width to 960, which is our standard width. We may play with this later if we don't like the way it looks. I'm not going to put in a minimum height. I'm going to do the body last because I want you guys to see how these are coming in. So I'm on the box settings. The category is box. The width is 960. And then for the margin, it's 5 auto, 5 auto. And that's going to make it center because doing the left and right as auto centers that div tag. Okay, so I am going to set the background color on this just so that you can see where it's hitting. So in my background, and you can pick any color you want. We'll make it transparent later. So right now I'm just going to put it in as a gray, and I'm going to hit apply. And what you'll see is a combination of setting, I'm going to hit OK, a combination of setting the width and the auto on the margins centers your div tag. And I personally like to have that 5 pixels at the top just because I consider that background color that we're going to put in to be the matting around an image. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and edit that body. And so that's, when we hit plus here, we're going to choose a tag. And we're going to select the body tag. And we're going to hit OK. And all I'm going to do here is make the background black. Pick something dark black, dark blue, I don't care what you do. Hit apply. Later I'll take the color out of the container probably. Actually, I don't mind the dark gray. So you should end up with a black body background and a container that is gray. And it probably has some text in there saying the content goes here. So we're going to put in 2 more divs. So in the content for ID container goes here. I'm going to insert layout object div tag. And we're going to choose insert after start of tag div ID container because we want it to be inside the container. And we'll check it. We may have to tweak it with our code if I get this wrong. Again, I want to give it an ID. And my ID is going to be image large. That's going to be my large image. I could do it as, I probably want to do all lowercase here. Image large. And you can hit and just make your new CSS rule right here as well. And so I want to set this one up. I'm going to give it a different background color just to show you where it's at. This will help us make sure everything's being placed. And then I want to make it in the box. I'm going to set the width here to 660. I'm going to set the float to left. I'm going to set the padding, same for all, to 15. So again, I set the background color. I just picked a dark red. We're going to get rid of the background colors when we're done. I set the width to 660. I set the float to left. And then I set padding to 15 all the way through. Background, change the color. Box, width 660, float left, padding 15 all the way through. Hit either apply or OK. You're going to end up hitting OK when you're done, but if you want to hit apply and test it, we can go back and change some of our settings if we need to. And hit OK. And it should be inside your content. And it's going to look a little funky right now because it's not recognizing the height of some of our nested content. We've seen that before. So when I see this, the fix for this is typically to go into your container and put in a minimum height. Notice we could add a property right here. And we could add the property of height right here. And I'm going to do this rather than in the box because I don't want to do a height. I want to do a minimum height and set that minimum height of, we'll say 800. And that was on the image large, which was not what I wanted. So I can delete that. I wanted to do it on the container. And I can I can see all my properties, add property, and put in min-height and put in 800. There we go. Okay, so now I have a minimum height for my container. And this is really the way I work. I don't start putting content in until I have my layout set up. That saves you a lot of trouble down the road if you do your structure first, then your content. You can work on your content outside in Word, copy, paste. Get your structure down. Now, I'm not completely happy with this because I want some space that's gray. So that means I'm going to have to either add padding to my container or a margin to my image large. So I'm in the container. Let's see if I add padding of 15px. There. Okay, that's what I was actually looking for. So sometimes it's hard to remember what's margin, what's padding. If you do it one property at a time and test it, that helps you get exactly what you want. Is that working for everybody? Does anybody need more time or for me to help them? Okay. All right, so we have one last div tag to put in. So if you change to split view, it's going to go after your large image, or if you are in the design view, it goes right in front. You put your cursor right in front of the C, or select the C for content for ID goes here, and you're going to insert layout object div tag, and we're going to, after start of tag, ID, and I'm calling this one thumb because it's where our thumbnails will be. And I'm going to again hit new CSS rules and OK. So again, we're going to make the background a different color, just one we haven't already used. And we're going to go to the box. We're going to make it 200 wide. We're going to have it float left. And on the margin, I just want to set the left margin to 20. So again, we created a new div. We named it, we gave it an ID of thumb. I clicked the CSS box and we're in here. We changed the background to any other color. Your settings are width of 200, a float of left. I'm not putting in the height here because I want a minimum height, not a height. So we're going to show you how to do that in a second. Padding, I have none here. Margin, I just put left margin. I want it padding of 20 pixels right here. And then I'm going to hit either apply or OK, and then OK again. If you want to check it with apply before you leave, you can see if you're getting the settings that you want. And OK, and OK, and that did not work the way I wanted it to. And that's common. So I'm going to go here into my, and see where I put it in, because usually what happens there is it goes into the wrong place, and it did. My thumb container did not go where I wanted it to, so I'm going to have to cut it and put it after the image large. And then take another look. Okay, now with it sitting like this, I'm going to want to add property here. I'm going to want padding left to be 25 pixels and padding right 25. And I'm going to want a minimum height, which is not an option in our box, min dash height of 500. And I'm kind of okay with that. When I put the padding in, I'm okay with that. I probably want to put in a minimum height for my large image here. You guys may have already put in height for that. Click on image large. And if you don't have a height, add a minimum height. If you have a height, just put MIN in front of it. And we're also going to put that one at 600 pixels. And that gives me reasonably the layout that I want. I probably won't change colors till I'm completely done. So that's my structure. At this point, being prudent, knowing that technology is full of errors, what should we do? Yes, absolutely. Before we retest, we should save. Saving is a really, really good idea. So make sure you save this. And it's not a bad idea to test it. You can check it in live view, or you can launch it in a browser. And I'm pretty much okay with the way this looks right now. But since we set it up ourselves, we can now tweak it. And the purpose of this exercise was to show you how to put together your own layout without using the templates. I actually think in some ways this is less confusing. What do you guys think? A little different. You guys should know each way to do it. You've now created a layout using hand code. You've done a layout using templates, and you've done a basic layout just by putting in your own div tags. Now I'm going to put my images in here. So in Dreamweaver, I'm going to insert an image, and I'm going to go into the same folder that I'm currently in, Web 175. They should be in your O9 folder. I have mine in a subfolder. That's optional. And it's saying they're not here. Okay. Let me go back to Files. They did not come down from the internet. You want to put your images in 9. Put your images in 9. Okay, I don't have the images that I wanted. I'll just grab these because I can't get into the internet. But you want to make sure that you're in Lab 9. I'm going to put them in this folder. I don't know if this is going to work. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. Ah, it worked. Okay, so I have images 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so you can either insert image or you can actually just drag it in. And that did not go where I wanted it to. Okay, so it's there. That's not where I want it. We'll delete it. I will select content here and choose insert image. And then I will go to web 175, 9, large, image 1. And this is Kitty and Eli. All right, now this was not the size of the image that I wanted. So here, I had other ones set up, but I can't connect to the internet. I could resize this, which would pixelate it, but I typically would have everything set to 500 here for the width, and I may want to go back in and center those when I'm done. So I'm just going to set mine as a maximum width of 100. Now here, does everybody have their image in there? You want to put a large image. Before we can do any programming with this, make sure you've selected the image itself and give it an ID. And I'm calling it main image because it has to be named. You can give it your ID right here. It has to be named for us to program it. Now, ideally, if you're doing this for your project, do not resize photos larger here because they look pixelated. I had one specifically set for this assignment, and they were set to 600 in width. So Kitty and Eli will come back and center them afterwards. I have mine set to a width of 500. Does anybody need help getting their image in? The next step is going to be to put your images in the thumbnail area. And so we're going to do the same thing 4 times in a row. So we're going to put in insert image, and I'm going to put in image 1. Eli and Kitty. And then I'm going to resize these to a width of 150. Resizing, you want to make sure that these stay constrained. Lock your constraints here on the width and height. Make sure that toggle size constraint is locked. And I'm going to make mine 150 wide and let it just float. I can get rid of the text here. And then you want to actually tab after it and hit enter. You want the next one on a new paragraph. And then you're going to insert image, image 2, Eli. And again, I'm going to make sure that's constrained and set the width to 150. I'm going to click next to it and hit enter because I'm creating a new paragraph. Insert image, image 3. I think that was Eli again. Nope, that's Kitty. So here I can change the alt right there. And that's a width of 150. And I can put in my last one, insert image, image 4. That's another one of Kitty. Kitty 2. And again, I can set it to 150. Now that all of my content is in here, I can start playing. I had a blank line here. Can you guys see how I saw that I had too much space here, and I'm checking that it's a blank line? I can get rid of that. And let's look at the design. Okay, and this is where I'd start before I go any further. I'd look at this and I'd say, am I happy with this? And the answer is, no, not quite. No, not quite. So I'm looking at this, and what I see that I want to do is I want to center my thumbnails and make them a little smaller. So how would I center my thumbnails? Set margins. I'm going to have to do a compound CSS style where it will be images in the thumbnail. But is that actually what I want to do? Because I want to do the same thing over here. So for the images, I could just make all images with a margin of 0, 0, or 5, 5, and auto. And that should fix all of them. Can you guys see how that would work? So I'm going to start by adding a new tag definition where we're going to redefine image. So instead of compound, we're just going to do a tag, and it's going to be image, and we're going to hit OK. And for the box, actually this isn't going to work. The reason it's not going to work is because we want to set a width for it. This might work because they do have widths defined in there. Well, we'll find out. Sometimes you just have to try. So I'm not going to set the width. I'm not going to set the float. I'm going to set the margin unchecked, same for all. I'm going to do 5 for the top. Auto, 5, auto. Now, I don't know if this is going to work because for it to recognize the auto, it has to have a width. We did assign the width. The width is in the HTML. I have no clue if this will work or not. Nope, didn't. Okay, so what we need to do is we're going to cancel that. I'm actually going to delete this, and I need to do the thumbnail images. So again, I'm going to select an image on the thumb side, and we're going to do a compound CSS rule. So that's going to be container, thumb, paragraph, image. Yep, they're all in paragraphs. That should work. Though we can actually make it simpler. We could actually just make it, and you should simplify where you can. The only thing we care about is that it's images in the thumb section. Images in the thumb section. So I need thumb and image. And then we want to set our width. And I said it was too wide on mine. I thought they were too big, so I'm going to set the box. I'm going to change these to 100, so we'll see I may have to change them more to fit there. We're going to set the width to 110 here. And we're going to set the margin unchecked, same for all, 5, auto, 5, auto. Now that narrowed them here, and it did not center them. And it should have. So the other thing we can do in here, we can just go back on that. Actually, we can go back into the thumbnail section, and we can go into block, text align, center, and hit apply. And that worked. So that's your second option. Now, because I overrode the width here with the CSS, that's made them skewed. So I'm going to click on each one of these and change the width down to 100 here, where it's proportionally fixing them. And my favorite command, Command Z. Why is that my favorite command? Undo. Okay, so I'm reasonably happy with the right-hand side. Now here, my best bet, if these might be changing, may be to go into my image large. Now I want to actually, and what I might do here is go into my block vertical align middle, text align center, and see what happens. Yeah, that pretty much does what I want. Well, I got the text line center. So that to me is better. So take 10 minutes, get to where you're happy with this, and if you want to change your colors to all black, this would be the time to do it. Get this far. I'll come around and help you. I'm going to leave mine funky colors because I really don't mind. And then we'll go in and add the JavaScript. And again, to center the image here, what I did was I centered in the image large container. I went into the block and did vertical align middle, text align center. The vertical align didn't really work. If I want it further down from the top, I'd have to either add padding to the container or a margin to the image. Now I'm looking at this, I'm saying, what do I want to change? I think I want to change my minimum height here. And make that 550. And I'm a little happier with that. And then I might, on my container, make that 600. And if I wanted to go through and make these all black, it's really easy to do just by clicking here. And that is actually what I was looking for. You guys can see how having different colors can help you see where everything is. And it's really easy to flip it back just by clicking on your background color and changing it to whatever you want. The easiest step, and this is the step I have online already. We're going to make these change. So before we can do that, you want to click on that main image and make absolutely certain it has an ID and how you spelled it. No spaces, main image, ID. You guys with me? Okay. And then we're going to I'm going to close my CSS because I'm done with it. I'm done with my files. I don't need them right now. I'm going to click on the first image up in the thumbnails. And I'm going to go to Window and Behaviors. And it's actually over here. Just make sure Window Behaviors is open. And so I'm now in the Behaviors here, and I'm going to hit the plus sign for Add Behavior. I'm going to select Swap Image. So you've got, if you didn't have it open, it's Window Behaviors. Under Behaviors, you hit the plus sign. About 3/4 of the way down, you'll see Swap Image. It should bring up this window. Everybody with me here? Anybody need help getting to this point? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to select main image, because that's the image we're going to change. And that's why it had to be named. So we have image, main image. We do want to preload images. We do not want to restore images on mouse out. We're going to hit OK. I'm sorry, we're going to set source to browse, and since that's image 1, I'm going to select image 1. We want it to be whatever you mouse over. The fact that it's currently there is irrelevant, because at some point it's going to change, and we want it to be able to change back. Then we're going to click on the second thumbnail. We're going to add swap image. We're going to uncheck restore image. And we're going to make sure, again, that we're choosing the main image. And we're going to set the source to whatever our current thumbnail is, image 2. And we're going to hit OK. And we'll repeat that. Swap image, main image, uncheck restore, select your image, image 3. And then you will save. And I know I went really fast, but I'll come around and help you guys. This is the end of the lab. You'll save it and you will test it. And if I made no mistakes, now these are different widths, so the one's getting slightly skewed. I would fix that by having them all to the right size in Photoshop. But you can see that this is a fairly nice way to have images change.